So it's time to buy a house, and everyone around you has some sort of opinion on what you should and shouldn't buy, and all of these opinions clash together, so you're starting to get a little confused with what you truly want. Now, my goal today is going to be going over the few things that I've seen just throughout different inspections that I've had, and different issues that rose throughout my real estate career here in the greater Cleveland area. So if you are starting to think about buying a home over here, I am a realtor. I help a lot of people move to this area every year, so you can find all my contact information down in the description. But I got to get back to the topic, which is going to be making sure that you get a house that you're happy with and understanding what to avoid depending on what you're seeing in these houses as you're touring them. Now, first and foremost, I want to get it across to you that it is still a seller's market here, so buyers do not have as much leverage as they would in any other regular market. And with that comes a lot of buyers who are giving up their contingencies, and the inspection is one of those that people are commonly getting rid of, but I personally do not think you should do that. There's ways around getting your offer accepted and still having that inspection contingency, but still being competitive in a multiple offer situation. You just got to know how to navigate it correctly. Now, the reason for this is because the inspection period is what's going to uncover a lot of these issues. You're probably not going to see some of them as you're walking through the house, and believe me, a lot of them are pretty easy to miss. So even if you are working with another realtor and not me, do yourself a favor and make sure you get that inspection period as a contingency on your offer. If you want some more information on what an inspection actually entails, I've got other videos on that, so go check those out. But we're going to hop right into number one for one of the most common things that I see with basements in the Cleveland area. It is going to be stay away from houses with structural issues. If you do not feel comfortable buying a house with structural issues, do not do it. But if you do want a good price on a house, you do have the opportunity to negotiate these houses a lot lower in price, but it is going to come with a lot of work. So what I mean with houses that have structural problems, I'm talking about things like houses that have been improperly modified without any sort of engineering done to it, and you can clearly tell that something's wrong just based on how the house is leaning or something along the lines of that. Or down in the basement is where you're going to find the majority of your foundation problems. The foundation is what's responsible for holding the home upright, so it is important that there is nothing wrong with it. And in Cleveland, we have a lot of basements here, so when you neglect taking care of them, they can commonly have issues such as cracking, and they can quickly start to deteriorate if the water is not routed directly away from the house. I talk about it in all my videos. Water is the enemy when it comes to basements. You do not want it anywhere near the house. If you are touring a house with a basement, while you're down there, take a look at how straight the walls are. And what I mean by straight is normally it would be a straight line up and down for the foundation walls and the house would be sitting on top of it. But when there's a water issue present, you're going to see moisture in the corners or where the floor meets the foundation itself. Another sign of an issue is going to be cracks in the wall. Now, small cracks are not really a concern. You just want to make sure they're sealed. But if it's more than a 1/4 inch big, you are probably going to have some sort of issue at that spot. If the walls are bowing and are not straight, that is also a sign of further issues, and those ones can be pretty costly to fix. Something to keep in mind is that everything is fixable, but you just have to have it make sense as far as the price goes and your level of comfortability with it. As long as it's fixed right and maintained, it shouldn't be an issue in the future. Moving into point number 2 for the types of houses that you should stay away from when you are buying is going to be housing in poor locations. Now, poor locations can mean a few different things. One can be high crime areas. Values in high crime areas are going to cause you a lot of problems while you're living there. Not to mention, if you were to ever go and sell it in the future, it's going to be less desirable for potential buyers, which essentially will not bring you as much value when you go to get rid of it. Homes in areas that are prone to natural disasters can also be problematic as well. It makes it a little bit harder on the sell side. And while you're living there, you're probably going to have to carry some sort of extra insurance. There's not too many areas in the greater Cleveland area that are prone to natural disasters besides flooding, just because we have a lot of natural water sources around here. So if your home is close enough to those locations, you have the possibility of it flooding at some point. But again, that totally lands on what your comfortability is with where you're at, and you can look back in time and see what the actual chances are of it flooding over that area or the chance of that natural disaster happening. Another topic that lands in that poor location category is one of the lesser important ones in my opinion, and that is going to be a house that is on a main road. Now, depending on how you feel about that, it could be hit or miss. A lot of people want to land in a neighborhood that is tucked away off of a main road with no one passing through it, just for overall safety and quietness. But if you do buy a house on a main road, just know that it is going to be a little bit harder to sell when you go to get rid of it, just because it's a little bit less desirable than those houses that are tucked away. Now, me personally, my last 2 houses have been on a main road and I've never had any issues. I've got dogs, and as long as you keep up with making sure that they only stay in the backyard with your fence, you really shouldn't run into any problems. If you keep these topics of poor location on your mind while you're doing the buy side of it, it's going to make your life a lot easier when it comes time to resell. Now, moving into point number 3 for the types of houses that I recommend avoiding when you are buying is going to be homes with title issues. Unfortunately, this is the silent killer for some deals because a lot of the times the homeowners aren't going to know when there is a title issue with their house until they are under contract and the title company is doing their title search. So lucky for you, there is verbiage in the purchase contract that the house needs to transfer to you with a clear title, because if that weren't the case, you would be walking into a trap. And that is the big reason why we do title work and why it is super important, because it's going to tell you the whole history about the house and all of the different transfers and possible liens that might be on the property, so that way you know you're getting a clean title. Now, topic number 4 for houses that I do not recommend buying are going to be houses with a lot of deferred maintenance. Now, when you're a homeowner, there's a lot that you need to maintain. And if you walk into these houses that are really neglected, there's probably going to be a lot of issues that are going on with them, or at least the possibility of needing a lot of fixing after you move in. Buying these types of houses can be extremely lucrative. However, if you do not have an interest in doing any sort of renovation, or you feel unfit for buying something like that, you should definitely stay away from it. Me personally, I do a lot of investing, so as we're walking through these houses, I'm going to be able to point out different things that are wrong with the house. The vast majority of the time, the houses that we're touring, I do not own, so I do not have any reason to hide anything from you. I'm here to make sure that you are making a good investment when you're buying your home, so I'm going to be pointing out potential issues or things that you need to keep in mind when you are buying that home. And then even further than that, we'll get that inspection period while we are under contract for someone to go in there and totally pick the house apart. Deferred maintenance can mean anything from not having trees trimmed back, not having the gutters cleaned, old mechanical systems, outdated plumbing. If the house has been vacant for a certain amount of time, you need to make sure that it was winterized if winter came around, because when you go to turn on the water, it could have blown pipes. There's just a lot that goes into it that you need to keep in mind going through this process. It's just not something fun to deal with if you were not totally expecting it from the start. Topic number 5 for houses that I would not recommend buying are ones with hazardous material. Now, this one comes with a caveat because a lot of these houses that are in the Cleveland area were built prior to 1978, which means there's probably some sort of lead paint in it. And that's not necessarily a bad thing so long as it is encapsulated properly. As long as the paint is not chipping on the home, you are in good hands. It's only an issue if you ingest it into your body. So as long as nothing's chipping or everything is encapsulated with another paint, you are going to be fine. Now, I'm not a lead expert, but I'm just going based off of what an inspector would say. Now, there's different types of asbestos. A lot of the times they used it to wrap the furnace ducts, and those ones are okay as long as you encapsulate them with paint and make sure they're not chipping, because those ones can cause lung cancer. The other thing that is pretty common around here for asbestos is going to be the floor tiles in basements. Now, those ones are the 8x8 tiles that lay on the floor, and if they're chipping, it is going to be a problem. You can lay another type of flooring over it or paint over it and encapsulate it, but that lands with whatever your comfort level is. Now, the type of hazardous material that I do not mess with is going to be mold. I do not suggest people buy houses that have extensive mold problems. Now, I'm not talking about something that is just surface mold or something that can be fixed and remedied with a professional clean out. I'm talking basements that you walk downstairs and the walls are just caked with mold. Same with the ceiling joist. It's just not an easy thing to get rid of. It's super costly. And if you don't have a qualified person do it with some sort of warranty, you can have potential future issues as well. It's just not something that you want to risk having come back in the future. Number 6 on the list of houses that you should not buy is going to be houses that have a poor layout. Now, everything can be fixed with a great attitude and more money, and that is certainly going to be the case in layouts. If you need to do any sort of structural changes, you got to bring an engineer in, you got to bring a qualified professional. It is going to get expensive. Those houses with awkward floor plans are going to make it a little bit trickier to sell in the future. Now, as long as it's priced right, everything will sell, but it just will give you a little bit more of a road bump in the future when you go decide to get rid of it. Not to mention that unless you bought the house for a really good price, changing that layout is probably not going to give you a huge return on your investment. If you want to learn a little bit more about what improvements add value to your home, I do have a video on that, so go check it out. But the last thing on my list of houses that you should not buy is going to be point number 7, and that is going to be houses with unpermitted work. Now, depending on what area you are in, houses with work that has been done to it that was unpermitted can lead to potential sale issues. Flip houses that were done by people who do not follow the law are commonly the ones that have corners cut in them. As we're touring these properties, I'm going to be keeping my eyes on different things that are going to count as like sloppy jobs, such as like drywall, tile, wiring, plumbing, potential foundation fixes, really anything that could have potentially had a cut corner to it that most people wouldn't notice. So I can point it out as a potential issue before it even becomes an issue. And the reason I point these things out is because you're the one buying the house. It's a very big investment that you are making, so I need to make sure that you are 100% comfortable with what you're doing. And I hear horror stories of people who have gotten misled when they were buying homes, and I want to be the person that people trust and come to because they know they're getting a good value with what they are buying. So moral of this whole story is that it is so important to do your due diligence when you are buying a house and work with someone who you do trust that is a professional in this realm of real estate. It's going to save you a lot of headache, and it's going to save you a lot of money on top of that. So if you are starting to think about moving to the Cleveland area, feel free to reach out to me. All of my contact information is down in the description. And while you're down there, hit that like button because it's going to help me out a lot. And definitely subscribe if you want to keep up to date with everything that's going on in the Cleveland real estate market. But with all that being said, I'm going to leave the video there. I'll catch you in the next one.